Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Hi, Reddit. I'm currently caught in an emotionally draining situation with my future mother-in-law, Susan. My fiancé, Daniel, 34 male, and I, 30 female, are planning our wedding. But Susan's blatant favoritism towards Daniel's ex-wife, Lauren, has created a toxic rift. The situation hit a boiling point when Susan informed us that she wouldn't be attending her own son's wedding because she had to attend Lauren's destination wedding with her affair partner instead. Let me give you the full story because this situation is so messy. Daniel and I met 5 years ago through mutual friends. From the moment we started talking, there was a connection that felt natural and easy. Daniel is kind, patient, and emotionally grounded, everything I was looking for in a partner. Early in our relationship, he opened up about his past marriage to Lauren, which had ended 4 years earlier. He didn't shy away from the messy details and was refreshingly honest about his experiences. Daniel married Lauren in his mid-20s, and at first, he thought she was the one. Lauren was charming and outgoing, but as their marriage progressed, cracks began to show. Lauren had a habit of lying, and she cheated on Daniel multiple times throughout their 6-year marriage. Daniel, being the forgiving person he is, gave her chance after chance, largely because of pressure from his mother, Susan. Susan adored Lauren. She would constantly tell Daniel, "She's such a good wife. She's just young and wild. And no marriage is perfect. Just be patient." Even when Daniel discovered Lauren in a long-term affair with one of his co-workers, Susan downplayed it, insisting it was just a mistake and that Lauren was only human. Eventually, Daniel couldn't take it anymore and filed for divorce, but the process wasn't smooth. Susan openly sided with Lauren during the separation, even inviting her to family events while Daniel was left out. When Daniel and I started dating, Susan's attitude toward me was immediately cold. She barely made an effort to get to know me and would frequently compare me to Lauren. "Lauren's always loved doing this," or "Lauren would have handled that better," were common phrases. It was awkward and exhausting. I tried to rise above it, thinking she just needed time to adjust to someone new in Daniel's life. Meanwhile, Susan and Lauren's relationship continued to thrive. Susan invited Lauren to birthdays, holidays, and even family vacations, conveniently neglecting to inform Daniel or me. Lauren, for her part, made it clear she enjoyed her position of being the favorite. She would post pictures with Susan on social media with captions like, "The second best mom I could ask for," and "Grateful for family that's always there for me." Daniel proposed to me last year, and I was overjoyed. We started planning a small but beautiful wedding, with the hope that it would be a time to bring everyone together. Despite Susan's past behavior, I wanted to include her. I invited her to dress shopping, cake tasting, and venue tours, thinking this could be an opportunity to build a better relationship. Susan declined every single invitation. Her excuses ranged from being too busy to not wanting to impose. I later found out she had been spending that time with Lauren, going shopping and attending spa days together. It felt like she was deliberately undermining our wedding planning to show where her loyalty lay. A few weeks ago, Susan dropped a bombshell. She wouldn't be attending our wedding because Lauren was having a destination wedding the same weekend with her affair partner. Susan claimed Lauren had no family to support her and that it was her duty to be there. She said it with such sincerity, as though this was a perfectly reasonable explanation for missing her son's wedding. Daniel was visibly hurt, but he brushed it off, saying, "That's just how mom is." I, on the other hand, was furious. How could she prioritize Daniel's cheating ex-wife over her own son? I confronted Susan, asking her how she could justify her decision. Her response? "Lauren needs me more than Daniel does. She doesn't have anyone else." This was the final straw for me. I was done trying to appease Susan or gain her approval. A few days after Susan's announcement, Daniel and I were talking about how to handle the situation. That's when I told him, and later Susan, that I was pregnant. It wasn't something we had planned to share so soon, but the timing felt right. I thought this news might shift her perspective and make her realize how important her son's family should be. I told Susan, If you can't show up for your son on his special day, then don't expect to be a part of our child's life. I was firm but calm, making it clear that this wasn't an idle threat. Susan didn't take it well. She accused me of being manipulative and using the baby as leverage. She claimed I was being spiteful and cruel for cutting her out when all she was trying to do was support a poor, lonely woman, Lauren. She ended the call by saying she had no choice but to attend Lauren's wedding and hung up on me. After our confrontation, Susan began making threats. She called Daniel, saying she was heartbroken and that we were unfairly punishing her. She even went as far as to say she would explore legal options to ensure she had access to her grandchild when they were born. It was absurd. Our baby isn't even here yet, and she's already talking about lawsuits. To add insult to injury, I discovered through mutual friends that Susan was helping Lauren plan her wedding while actively ignoring our own. Lauren has even been bragging about how Susan chose her over us, adding fuel to an already toxic situation. Daniel has been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal, but I know it's been hard for him. His relationship with Susan has always been complicated. On one hand, he craves her approval. On the other hand, he knows how manipulative and toxic she can be. He told me he's ready to cut ties if it means protecting me and our baby, but I can see how much this decision weighs on him. The rest of the family is divided. Some of Daniel's relatives agree that Susan's behavior is unacceptable, while others think we're being too harsh. One of Susan's sisters even suggested that I apologize to her for the sake of family unity. Meanwhile, Lauren is relishing the drama. She's been telling anyone who will listen that I'm jealous of her relationship with Susan and that I'm trying to isolate Susan from her family because I know that Daniel still loves her. What a bunch of crap. We're moving forward with our wedding, but it's bittersweet knowing Susan won't be there. I've made it clear that she won't be a part of our child's life unless she apologizes and demonstrates that she's willing to prioritize Daniel and our family. As for her threats of legal action, I'm not sure how serious she is, but the fact that she'd even consider suing us over access to our baby is alarming. We will look into seeing a lawyer when the baby is born. Reddit. Am I the a-hole for setting this boundary with Susan and telling her she's not welcome in our baby's life if she can't prioritize her own son? OP's mother-in-law's behavior is appalling. She's actively prioritizing someone who betrayed her son multiple times over her own family. And now she's doubling down by threatening legal action over a child who isn't even born yet. OP has shown incredible patience by including her in wedding planning and trying to mend fences. But her blatant favoritism toward Lauren and her complete disregard for OP's fiancé's feelings are unacceptable. Setting boundaries is the right move here, for OP's sanity and for the well-being of OP's future family. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Your mother-in-law has made her choice crystal clear. She values Lauren over her own son, and now over her future grandchild. It's shocking that she doesn't even seem ashamed of it. Good for you for standing up for yourself and your fiancé. The fact that she's willing to threaten legal action instead of apologizing shows how manipulative she is. Stay strong, and don't let her guilt trip or push you into changing your boundaries. Not the a-hole. Dealing with a toxic mother-in-law like this is incredibly difficult, and it sounds like you've been more than reasonable. You gave her chances to be involved in the wedding, and even after all her favoritism toward Lauren, you still hoped she'd step up for her son. Her response to your pregnancy and the wedding situation shows she's not willing to prioritize anyone but herself. You're absolutely right to protect your baby from this kind of negativity. Stay firm in your boundaries and don't let her manipulate you. Not the a-hole. Your mother-in-law has crossed so many lines it's hard to count. She's prioritized your fiancé's cheating ex-wife over him, dismissed your feelings, ignored your wedding planning, and now she's threatening to sue you over a baby that isn't even born yet. That's unhinged. It's time to cut her off completely. Your baby doesn't need that kind of toxic influence in their life, and neither do you. Stick to your boundaries, and don't let anyone guilt you into backing down. You've done nothing wrong. My fiancé, 24 male, and I, 23 female, have only been engaged for about 6 months and didn't want to wait too long, so we'll be getting married in less than 3 months. We are only inviting about 50 people, but decided to make our wedding as memorable as possible, so rented a villa on the mountainside for 10 days. The wedding will span over multiple days with a combination of ceremonies from both my fiancé's culture and my own. The villa is near some scenic areas, hot springs, waterfalls, etc. So we have created an itinerary that involved all the invited guests and us visiting these places. We have already paid for a couple of the attractions, like bungee jumping, for the guests that wanted to participate. Everything from the clothing of the bridal party to the trips nearby, my fiancé and I will fully cover the cost. We both earn well, so this is something we wish to do as it will allow our families and friends to enjoy themselves without worrying about money. Well, my fiancé's older sister, I'll call her Allie, and her fiancé have not been able to come up with a decent wedding plan yet. They have been engaged for a couple of years, but do not earn as well as my fiancé and I do, so couldn't afford an entire wedding. Allie talked to us and asked if she could hold her wedding at the villa we rented on some of the days that we wouldn't be having our ceremonies and were going to go out instead. Most of the guests she wanted at her wedding are already invited, so it wouldn't be much of a hassle, and the villa is going to be decorated for our wedding ceremonies anyway, so it might as well be used for hers. She additionally suggested that the briding party's clothing could also be used for her ceremonies. In all this, she is willing to pay 40% of whatever the wedding was going to cost us. Up to this point, I was firmly against it, as those days were set aside for our guests to go out and enjoy themselves instead of being cooped up in the villa. However, she brought up the fact that if she chose a latter day for her wedding, people will question why her younger brother got married before her, as this is considered shameful in my fiancé's culture. People might talk of my sister-in-law negatively and make rumors like her fiancé isn't serious about marrying her. We told her to give us some time to think and have talked amongst ourselves since. My fiancé has left the decision entirely up to me and promised to stand by me regardless of what I choose. He said while he does love his sister and wants to help her, this is something we have wanted for a long time, so even if he is willing to make the sacrifice, he will not ask that of me. Whatever the decision may be, we will present it as a collective decision, rather than placing the entire weight on me. I don't know what I should do now. Should I let my sister-in-law have her way or go about my wedding as previously planned at the expense of upsetting her and possibly my fiancé's parents? Oh, this is interesting. I advise not to allow her to hold her wedding during your 10 days. She has been engaged for years, so she has no one to blame for the non-wedding. First, if you let this happen, you will never be able to celebrate your wedding as an occasion for you and your husband. Her name will be included for every anniversary. Second, I personally wouldn't want to have wedding pictures that look almost the same as my sister-in-law. I can see why it would be convenient since everyone will already be there, and offering to pay 40% means she's not trying to mooch off of you. If you decide to allow it, I would make her choose different outfits for the bridal party. Having it in the same location is one thing, but everyone dressing the same takes away from your wedding. It's a hard spot she's put you in. Just go with your gut. I am currently engaged to my partner of 4 years, and we are expecting our first. Slightly unexpected, due to a birth control issue, but will be adored regardless. Child in a couple of weeks. We live in New Zealand and have roughly similar asset levels going into getting married, so we weren't planning on getting a prenup. However, my grandmother, 98, has recently been very unwell and isn't expected to live another year. When she dies, the remaining wealth from the former family dairy beef farm will be divided between their children, grandchildren, like me, great-grandchildren, like my child, with a predetermined 1/3 of the total going to each generation. There are some major caveats to inheriting anything that include 1. Anyone eligible must prove via DNA to be related to her. This is largely because one of my uncle's wives cheated around the time their first child, who is now 18, was conceived. Even though my uncle adores her like a daughter and the whole thing has been old news for a long time, this has dug it back up again, and she will likely, pending test, not inherit anything, as it's clear she's not a full sibling to her 2 brothers based on her appearance. 2. Spouses don't get anything if they have a prenup or are divorced. 3. Children of divorced marriages don't get anything, even if they prove a relation. 4. Children of prenup marriages don't get anything, even if they prove relation. This was largely influenced by the oldest of my uncles, who was twice divorced with 3 kids, who he lost custody of and is currently in a prenup marriage to a girl half his age, and he loves gloating about how watertight the will and trust are. Given my grandmother's ill health, my parents are pushing me to get a prenup, as this will disqualify my child, leaving my niece the only great-grandchild eligible to inherit anything. This is because my sister was a teen parent who has had continual alcohol D issues and is very much skint and supported by our parents. Due to the number of cousins there are, My sister and I won't get much from the 1/3 of our generation share, but my niece will get the entire 1/3 share for her generation. My parents believe they can use my niece's share to set my sister and her child up with a house and passive income, and think it would be unfair for my child to be included in the inheritance, as my partner and I have no financial issues. Now, I love my sister, but this is ridiculous. She can't be trusted with a nice vase because she will try to fleece it for money. Giving her a substantial amount of money and expecting her to suddenly change will only end badly. Plus, it's unfair to my child. This has turned into a huge family argument, and I'm being called selfish by essentially the majority of my family. Am I the a-hole for refusing to get a prenup and making my child ineligible for the inheritance? Not the a-hole. It seems everyone is looking out for your niece and sis. There may be a situation or time when you guys may be in a difficult spot and might need that money in the future for your child. You've got to think, what is the best option for you and your child? And if that is a no to prenup, then stick to your decision. My immediate family is anyway. Multiple members of the extended family are pissed at my parents for supporting my sister and helping her retain custody of my niece, because if she was forced to give her up, then she'd become ineligible to inherit, and then the inheritance would be divided in half by generation, instead of in thirds, which would obviously benefit my uncles in particular greatly. Not the a-hole. Your grandma has some weird ducking rules. Say your niece, well, sister, would stand to get $100,000. She'll still get $50,000. That's money she, your sister, has done literally nothing for. It's just bonus money. You were never planning on getting a prenup, by the looks of things, because you don't feel it's needed, etc. You definitely don't want to get one to intentionally disqualify your child from your grandma's inheritance. That your family thinks you should is also ducking weird. You could promise to put half into a bank account for your child to use once she reaches 18, 21, 25, whatever, and the other half to go towards expenses as she grows. If you're perfectly financially comfortable, then you could put it all away for her in something which earns interest. But honestly, your family has no right to the information about what you choose to do with the money your grandma is leaving your child. If you never wanted the prenup in the first place, and getting one would stop your child getting bonus money, don't get one. My 23 female, brother, 32 male, have always had a strained relationship. My brother is a devoted Roman Catholic with very conservative views. I am a liberal lesbian. We have never seen eye to eye, but regardless of this, our fathers, 64 male, love has always been able to tie the family together. He worked extremely hard for his business and to provide a good life for our family, even when doing it alone. My mother passed of cancer when I was about 4, and he never remarried. Our estate is pretty large, roughly 4.2 million USD for each child after my dad passes. One of my father's wishes, in order to qualify for his will, would be to never legally contest or sue either sibling for their share of the will. The party who does forfeits their entire cut of the estate. This is on the first page of the will and was repeated to us several times. A few weeks ago, a cousin, 28 male, Lou, was at my brother's house just catching up when my brother admitted he planned on suing me for my inheritance. My cousin was even able to snap a photo of the engagement letter from the attorney when he wasn't looking and sent it to me. Needless to say, I was pissed. I felt hurt and betrayed in a way I couldn't even really understand. I told our dad immediately, who called my brother to confront him. My brother denied it at first, but admitted to it after my dad kept pushing him. My dad said how disappointed he was in my brother for doing something so slimy to his own sister. My dad then told me to get a good lawyer and then proceeded to call his attorney to let them know what happened. My sister-in-law, 31, female, who also doesn't like me, called, and as it turns out, they're expecting another baby. I currently have 5 nieces and nephews from my brother. My brother and his wife are afraid they wouldn't be able to handle another child financially. Now, my brother and his wife are telling our family what happened, and while some are on my side, most of our family is calling me an a-hole for not offering the half of the inheritance back to my brother, because now his family will struggle, due to my selfishness. I've even had relatives come to my house just to curse me out on my front lawn. My dad suggests I stay strong and don't give in. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. If your brother was getting $4 million, then he wasn't suing you because he didn't think he could afford another baby. The only logical conclusion then is that he was suing you purely out of his own bigotry and spite for you being a liberal lesbian. That being said, I would take part of that money that he is no longer getting and set it aside for your nieces and nephews' college education. Maybe set up some kind of trust where they don't actually get the money. They just send their college tuition, housing, and book bills to someone and they cut a check and pay the bill. That way, your brother can't take the money for himself or guilt them into giving him some. Not the a-hole. The unmitigated greed of your brother is unbelievable. $4.2 million and him and wife think they'll struggle financially? Buy him a vasectomy as a goodbye present. This story is weird. Why was the brother going to sue? Theoretically, he's got to have a better reason than, "I want the money." Also, Dad's a surprisingly active participant in this. Are we assuming he's going to be dead soon? Because 64 isn't that old. I'm not entirely sure what my brother's and his lawyer's angle on this was going to be, but it would probably have been claiming me as mentally incompetent for the fact that I've been to a psych hospital twice when I was a teen for depression-related issues. I also have a slight hunch that he would have used my preference towards women against me in court, though I am unsure of how. Also, my dad's not dead. He is older and gave us a scare when he slipped a few months ago and broke his hip. My father died last year. Beforehand, he showed me the final copy of his will. It was simple, 50% to me, 50% to my half-sister. I wasn't always close with my dad. Parents split when I was young, and as a result, I've never been close with my half-sister. She's much older than me. We've never lived together, and until last summer, we hadn't seen each other in 10 years. She has 2 daughters, one of whom I've never met. At this meeting, she did mention she'd hoped Dad would give something specifically to her daughters, but I shrugged this off as I knew he hadn't, and I assumed she must not have seen the will. A few months later, and upon sorting the estate, I'm waiting for her to send me some documents, including the will, to sign. I messaged to ask if she's received them yet, and if she can forward them to me. This message is the reply I get. "I need to talk to you. Dad did want to leave something to the girls, but was too ill to sort it." Again, when shown the will and multiple times discussing it with him later, my dad didn't once say he'd wanted to change anything. Asking for clarification, and genuinely as calm a tone as I write this post, stating that he'd been through the will with me beforehand. I simply ask what exactly Dad said he wanted to change. From seemingly nowhere, I then receive this exact response. "Hang on, what's your problem with this? I don't want the money. It would go straight into the girl's account. I'm surprised you are even doubting it. Think about it. Dad loved my girls and wanted them looked after. I spent a lot more time with Dad, so had more opportunities to discuss this. He even had their bank details in the care home, but I couldn't ask him to call the bank as he was too ill and too tired. Ducking hell, are you for real?" Asking her to calm down, stating all I ever did was ask what Dad said and how much he wanted to give them. I eventually get clarification that they never discussed specifics. He just said he wanted them looked after. Despite not being close with them and not having even met both daughters, as someone with no children of my own, I had previously considered offering some of the money as extra to them. But due to being largely kept out of the loop of funeral organization, and in the end, only being told about the burial of the ashes literally less than 48 hours beforehand, I realized as we really aren't close, that's not my concern. And if that's what Dad really wanted, he'd have included it in the will in the first place. This latest exchange just cements that feeling. Would I be the a-hole for this? Again, we're not close, and I can tell you with certainty that once this is over, we'll go back to rarely speaking to each other, but they are technically my nieces. Not the a-hole. She got 50%. She is fully capable of giving, setting aside some of that for her daughters. Sounds like she's just trying to get you to cough up more of yours. Not the a-hole. Your father would have left the girls money if he wanted to. My assumption is that he split the estate in half, assuming your half-sister would take some of her inheritance and leave it to her girls instead of keeping it all to herself. You have no obligation to give away any part of your inheritance. His will was reviewed prior, and no changes were made. As you said, he never mentioned the granddaughters. Keep your money.